Oh, yeah, making a video. Okay, pay attention, Gary. You're making a video. Anyway, do some comments, I guess, and see where we go from there. So I think, I don't know, I left off somewhere around here somewhere, I suppose. It's good enough, I suppose. Nice that you've learned a new word from me and used it in your video, perpendicular. Strange. Now, Haffaday is the one who made that correction. I'm looking forward to you to include the concept of force perpendicular to motion in your theory to explain the circular motion of your fishes. Though I do expect to be credited in your acceptance speech for the Nobel Prize. Yeah, well, what I'll do is fart in your direction. That's what I'll do. Alright, so this is one of these Puro response videos. This guy seems to not like the idea of posting Puro's comments on the video. I say lighten up, buddy. The point of putting Puro's comments on the video is just to point out how silly they are, and so I think, good, do that. Anyway, so Puro's answer. Let's see, that's quite a concession. Okay, that's the other guy talking to Puro. Yeah, dude. So right there, as soon as he calls you a dude, he's playing games. The math not in nature, it's in our science, in order to carefully match the shapes we see to abstract shapes, not just by intuition. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty, okay, whatever. I don't think you understand, he doesn't understand the concept of math. Okay, yeah, math not in nature. Well, the relationships are in nature. The math is just a description of the relationship, so I think the math is in the nature. I mean, it's just idiotic. He doesn't know math is just a model. Math isn't in the universe. So there goes the math isn't in the universe. It's in our statements. So again, no, the math is just a description of a relationship that's in nature, like tree tall, bush short. Grass green, it has a frequency. Green is a frequency. Blue is a frequency. I guess he doesn't understand that. Well, of course he doesn't. He really doesn't. He really thinks we make things colors. The colors aren't a direct consequence of a difference in the photons. Math is a careful study of patterns. No, it's just a description of relationships. That's it. Now, a pattern can be a relationship, certainly. A pattern can be something creates, which is a relationship to that thing. But usually a pattern is not going to be caused by something without interactions. And interactions are relationships. When you say something looks like this mathematical object, say a circle, or a mathematical object, a circle isn't a mathematical object. It really isn't. The relationships inside of the circle that define the circle are mathematical formulas. Definitions of relationships, diameter to circumference to area, those are relationships. Anyway, or this one, say a parabola. That's a statement about the pattern you are seeing. And again, how does this have anything to do with you saying photons are waves and I know it for sure and nah. No, it doesn't have anything to do with that. That the circle is caused by magnetic orbit. I don't even know who's used that term, magnetic orbit. Or a parabola traced by a thrown ball. The math does not speak to that. Well, the math does speak to the relationship between the forces and the fact that because of the inverse square law, they tend to follow that pattern. But obviously, things like the fact that they acquire velocity, okay, sometimes, depending on their trajectory, means that it won't be a parabola. My thinking is due to watching lectures explaining QM explanations of diffraction. So my thinking is also a byproduct of being educated on the subject. Clearly, I didn't hear any of that crap that you just spoke in any of the lectures I've seen. Alright. So I was saying this, well, personally, I said, okay, so, Piro. Okay, got a reply from Piro on this one. Reads as follows. Read more. If you shoot particles at an obstruction with a slit, that does not create a diffraction pattern. So he's back to shooting bullets. And so what's the point? I mean, he won't concede that photons are particles. You know, I suppose you might concede that the bully balls, or whatever the hell they call them, the little pieces of carbon they did the experiment with and got some pattern, that those are actual particles. So those particles create a diffraction pattern. Diffraction is a wave phenomenon. Well, apparently it's not always a wave phenomenon. The pattern we see looks like that. Well, so what? It looks like that in one circumstance. In another circumstance, it doesn't look like that. Single slit doesn't look like that. It doesn't mean there's a wave, but no other explanation has been sufficient to explain the results. Oh, so now you're just saying it's the God of the gaps. Because you don't have a missing link, we're just going to keep believing in God. So until you prove with a missing link that human beings evolved from monkeys, you can't say it, you can't think it, you can't argue it. Because you don't have a piece of evidence. Okay, yes, I can't, you know, as yet. I can give you inferred and deduced explanations of how particle physics might work, in the sense that particles go into electrons, electrons spew them at different angles, and I can explain that that's where diffraction comes from. But I don't have a video of it, true enough. But either do you. Shoot bullets from a machine gun at an iron barrier with a slit. You don't get a diffraction pattern. You know, I mean, really, this is what he's resorting to? There's no point, right? I mean, I suppose if you could create an iron barrier with a slit, if you could create an iron barrier that actually duplicates atoms by the same size change, so you make an atom, you know, 1 billion times bigger with all of its field influences, then maybe you could bend a bullet. Maybe. Anyway, what a fucking asswipe. Alright, yeah, Superior Mind goes this. He does drift in places. I'll read this one. Gary's classical particles. Well, one, they are not classical, and secondly, they're a sum overlap, so the pattern can easily match an interference pattern without wave interference, obviously. A sum overlap. I don't think that's what they are either, but anyway. Question for people. If light is a wave, what is the frequency or color and the amplitude of a single photon? Well, this is part of their problem. It's part of the generic problem. I don't think they have even accurately defined a photon. Obviously, I don't think a photon is, you know, by their understanding, you can't describe a photon without describing a pair of photons, because that's where the frequency is created. Is you have to have more than one of them. If you don't have more than one of them, you can't see it as a photon. There's no such thing as a red photon or a blue photon. The tonness is created by the frequency, and without the frequency, you lose all your ton, which is exactly how I deduced, or I fell into the fact of thinking about gravity just being photons without any frequency. Also, what is the smallest distance a photon can travel? Well, I don't know if that's a useful question. Anyway, he says, I do have a working photon description I came up with today. Oh dear. Polarity, particle, and field interaction. People ain't gonna like it though. I already did the polarity particle part. I don't know what field interaction is exactly though. So I don't think they do much in the field, to tell you the truth. The frequency just goes straight. It can't do anything else until it goes into matter. That's the whole catch here. Till a frequency goes into an orbit, The frequency is unstoppable. Has to go into something with mass. Okay, the fact that you are denying this is caused by wave mechanism. I'm at a loss for words to the video I want. Okay, so I already did the water wave one. It's, you know, quite silly in the sense that they have a frequency of water waves that's way beyond the carrying capacity of the water, and certainly way beyond the tolerances of the experiment, in the sense that the thing blocking the barrier, the waves can never naturally get through the barrier because they have to move slower going through the barrier, and the frequency of the waves is much faster than the speed they go through the barrier. So with a narrow single slit opening, we see a plane wave emerge and say spherical wave on the other side of the barrier. Well, none of that is what you see anyway, so yeah, this is the description I already read. I mean, it's just such a false, fake, silly, terrible, really, demonstration. But all the links he links to are terrible. This is a good page, by the way, particularly near the bottom, the photon questions. I'm sure you'll skim over it in seconds. Yeah, so Young's single slit experiment. Is that this one? With a little funny machine and such. Let's see. Which one is this? Oh, this is just the terrible, silly little wavy thing. Alright, well anyway, so this one, okay, so you can just go down to this image right here and you're done, aren't we? Aren't we done already? I mean, they're calling this the single slit. So I have never been able to make that single slit pattern ever. So good luck doing that. You show me how you can do that. Go make a single slit and get that pattern and show it to me. Go ahead, let me see you do it. I can't do it. I don't know how you even manufacture something that dead. No bars at all. Nothing. Are we done with this page? Yeah, I think we're done with this page. Alright, and then more on water waves. I don't know whether that's this page or not. Well, anyway. I mean, I hate, you know, I've already been to these links. I'll open the page and make sure it's the same page. Yeah, so this is the, oh, okay, this one's even funnier. Alright, so they made this whole device. Okay, this is Australia science. It's just kind of, just by the name of this thing, you're just saying only Australia could waste money on something called this. What the hell? Where is it called? It's like the Australian something for learning and smartness. I mean, it's just this idiotic title. No, this is the same page with the silly thing here. So they have these videos. Okay, but this is really so bad. Alright, so this is right here. So we'll just say we're done, right? Well, let me go up to the other one just to prove that it's in all the videos have the same flaw. Alright, so I already played it in the other page, so I might as well open the other page, right? Yeah, so let's go where I have it already open. Because then the image shows on the video. Okay. So, they have a two-slit experiment in here, and it's made, well, I'll show you. I mean, it's here, it's an image of it. So they have a light source, and then an aperture, right? Okay, so, yeah, I know, there's two apertures before you even get to the slits. Alright, so you have a light source, an aperture, and then a filter, all trying to knock down how many photons get through. So these are impediments. Then you have an aperture, right? We know what apertures do. They spread the light, and they also create Newton's rings. So, you know, who knows what we're getting at the other end. So they should just get rid of this whole barrier altogether and just show us what this aperture does over here. That should be the first controlled experiment. Get rid of this and give us a view of what exactly the light that you're shining at these two slits actually looks like. Is it more intense in the center and less intense on the fringes? And does it have Newton's rings in it? Those are legitimate questions. Because as soon as you put an aperture here, that's what you're doing. So anyway, so what they do is they have a little mechanism they can crank out here to block the slits. It's a really crude, you know, I mean, it's just crude. You know, here. So they move this big giant thing. You can see the shadow it's casting. So it's already separated from the slits, right? So it's going to block one of these slits. this big clunky thing. It's going to go move in front of one of these slits. It's obviously not close to the metal, but you can see all these shadows. So it's obviously some distance from the actual slit. And then at the target, they're going to move another slit, right? Okay, another slit. That's right. There's 6 slits in this one experiment. Another slit across to detect how the intensity of the light getting through. Now that is a little bit problematic, just because there you got diffraction again. Now supposedly it shouldn't matter, because this detector, I don't know how big the head on this detector is, but they don't show you the detector, so we don't get to see what the detector behind this slit looks like. But they're going to move this slit across the field and tell you how many photons went through. And so they have an average of 300 a second is the count. And so the slit width is, I think it's, I think it said somewhere. Well, anyway, you can see them here, right? So it's like, so these are this is 0.25 millimeters, and so it's a pretty wide barrier. You can sort of see that anyway. Pretty wide barrier. It's at least 2 or 3 wavelengths wide. And the slits are, I think, around 800 nanometers, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. Alright, well anyway, so enough of the little stupid details. Anyway, so the experiment's over right here in this video, because this will just tell you why this is a fraud. So anyway, so they can move a barrier, a block over one of the slits at any time they want to, right? So they block one of the slits. So they haven't moved this one slit to the center, so it's still where it was. So it's off center by at least a quarter of a millimeter, which is, you know, a lot of space in these experiments. But anyway, so it's an off center single slit at obviously the distance of the double slits. So we already know that the diffraction pattern under that circumstance is really weak. But anyway, let's just play along. So, and what they do is they just crank this thing across this target, and what they're reading this way is how many photons they're receiving. Okay? So this is supposed to be, and the guy's cranking it by hand, so he's turning it by hand. right, that's real scientific. So anyway, the argument being made here is this is their single slit. Okay. Now, what you have to understand is this is their double slit. So this is presumably the same amount of field that they went across. So they went across the same exact amount of field. Now, if one of the slits was blocked, quite obviously, I think anybody could concede, quite obviously, you'd get a lot more light on one side than you would the other side. Right? I mean, a lot more. Like, all of the light would be on one side, and there'd be no light on the other side. Rationally, you can understand that, right? It really can't be any other way, can it? Logically? Realistically? Mostly? Okay. Well, anyway, so obviously you don't have that here. So there's no, they're arguing there's no diffraction. But I'm arguing right there it's sort of a giveaway. And now you have both slits open, so you should have twice as much light. Now there's not twice as much light here, right? Because this is the average height here. The average here, when you take the peaks and the troughs and you blend them out, you're going to have a line that's just a little bit higher than this line. So this is the double slit. So you have twice as much slit open, twice as much of an opening, and yet you don't have twice the number of photons. This line should be up at least 1/3 as a starting point for this destructive and constructive interference, right? So this cannot possibly be accurate. Right on its face, it fails, because this can't possibly, the average here isn't a high enough line for twice as many photons as in here, and there has to be twice as many. So it's just, you know, yeah, keep throwing bad experiments at me, and I'm supposed to what, debunk every one of your bad fucking examples. funded by the Australian Office of Learning and Teaching. I mean, doesn't it scare the fuck out of you that something that would be called the Office of Learning and Teaching couldn't figure out that calling yourself the Office of Learning and Teaching sounds like you're a fucking retard? Jesus. Learning and teaching. I mean, that can't, even in Australia, that can't be rational grammar. I mean, even I, someone who pays absolutely zero respect to grammar, knows that's not good grammar. Okay. So Huygens keeps coming up here. So good. I'm glad you mentioned Huygens here. You know, well, I'll get to that later because you're going to post another stupid pain in the ass link. You'll hate this, but you don't. But you don't think you have the burden of proof. Well, I'm just saying I don't really have a burden to. I don't need to prove, okay, for my purposes. I'm just saying I'm not. I would like to be able to provide you proof that photons are hard bodies. Okay, they're corpuscles. I'm saying there's lots of evidence that they are. Okay, like every single real experiment ever done with photons demonstrates they have a clear quanta of energy, that they're a condensed packet, that you can't subdivide them, and that you can't in any way really play with them in any way. Unlike any other wave thing, they will not interact with anything in a wave-like manner. You'll never detect their waveness. You'll never create a detector that can see them. When they put detectors on the two-slit experiment, the two-slit experiment doesn't work anymore. Why? Because they're not waves. So, but anyway, you want to believe they are? Go ahead. I don't care. I'm just saying you've been duped. You're a fool. You're an idiot. You're wrong. You don't think your theory needs to be held up to any standards of evidence. No, what I'm saying is my theory has a ton of evidence, and the biggest piece of evidence is the fact that it does what all these other bullshit theories don't do, which is create a grounds for unification, a solid ground. You're never going to make bent space-time do magnetism or any of the mundane things that happen inside of atoms, because we already know all of those things happen with real energy in the real 3 dimensions. We've already seen all of that energy. So you can't take any space-time energy and introduce it because there's no need for it, because we've already accounted for all the energy. It was only gravity where you're sitting there saying, where's the energy come from? And you're still stuck with magnetism and still stuck with the unknown energy source, but you're going to have a hard time taking your bent space and making it do magnets. And I'm just saying I'm providing you with a theory that unifies gravity and magnetism and inertia and velocity and time dilation. And I'm saying the biggest evidence of that theory being correct is the very fact that you could come up with something that can actually do that. Because even a fable or a fantasy character, you know, if I made Aquaman do gravity, well, Aquaman would suck at moving planets together, you know, or doing some other thing. You know what I mean? I couldn't even make a superhero because I'd have to keep changing the superhero to make him work in these different things. And here I've given you something so dirt simple. Frequency and polarization as the only features these tons can have. And so I've given you 2 features, that, well, they 3, in the sense they move the speed of light, they can be polarized, and they can come at a frequency. 3 simple little principles, and it covers everything. I'm just saying that's pretty strong evidence. Fuckface. Because you can't even come up with a lie that could do that. And I did it with the truth. Which is, in my opinion, a slam dunk pile of evidence. Again, to say it would be realistic for somebody to come up with a theory for one of these things, magnetism or photons or velocity or time dilation or gravity, and then accidentally have it also easily applied to all those other forces, just by accident alone, and be incorrect? Come on. Preposterous odds. All right. You believe that the evidence of your theory is, well, I don't know, it's not really evidence. It's just, you know, it's just a theory. And I'm just saying, I'm providing you with a theory that unifies gravity and magnetism and inertia and velocity and time dilation. The evidence of your theory is the freaking universe itself. The pencil drops on the table. No, what I'm saying is that that's how you know what gravity is, that it's a force. You're saying, where are these things? Well, I'm saying, look, you can detect them with any piece of matter in the universe. You can detect the things that are creating gravity. Okay, that's how you can detect them. But you can't detect them any other way. Just like photons or anything else, you have to obey the detection rules. You're not going to see the photons going somewhere. You're only going to see them when they hit electrons. That's the rule. We sort of understand that's the game we're playing, don't we? I'm just so I'm just saying that you can believe that bent space did that, or you can believe rationally, oh yeah, that there's a bunch of energy around me all the time that I'm not even aware of, and clearly there could be a bunch more that I'm not aware of. But that is affecting my matter. Gee, that's not a huge leap there, buddy. The most ridiculous religious-like circular logic imaginable. No. My theory explains where the energy comes from. Your theory doesn't account for it at all. You say, I go to a place where there's empty bent space-time thingy, and I can get as much energy as you ever want to have. You need some energy, I can give you forever energy from nothing. The bent space. You have said some things, but my evidence is gravity itself, and I have no burden of proof. Well, you're just putting pieces together here, so that's quote mining. Are for one for the ages. I've never even said anything close to that. This is so far away from what science is, it's just insane. Well, I'm saying if you think your evidence is what science is, then I'm saying you people are insane because you don't know the difference between dogma and religion and science, because there's nothing about this that has any integrity or any depth, and you just don't want OJ to be guilty, and it just seems like you're just deniers, and it's clear. There's really nothing more to be said here. I agree. Report back when you've done something other than argue with people over the internet about this. Well, I certainly won't report back to you, but I'll just certainly use you as an example of exactly what's wrong with the human race and human beings, okay? Is that these people who pretend to be scientists or pretend to give a shit about the truth don't give a rather motherfucking rat's ass about the truth. You're just a religious devotee. Your fucking icon demonstrates it. You want things to be pretty and magical, and that's it. You want a fantasy story to live by. You want the leprechauns to be real so you can be, you know, a magic, a mushroom clover. Fucking tart. Anyway. Right, you drop balls from a height of 10 feet, it tosses sideways, height of 10 feet, blah, blah, yeah, we already did something like that. Skid Row. Why would I want to go through two things at once? Why is that my desire? What I want to do is explain why there's a bright spot on the wall, blah, 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 blah. Oh. Yeah, sounds reasonable to me. I don't know what all this is. Nice. Oh, okay, I don't know. The fact that one of modern science's favorite quotes is, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics, should have been a clue to something is wrong. Yeah, well, that's, you know, that's the whole conversation. The whole, you know, and then, like I said, Feynman was so close, because Feynman conceded that, yeah, this might all come down to a checkerboard, and it might be all very simple, and it's just that there's so much of it, and it's so small, that, you know, it's duping us. He said these things, you know, and you're just saying shit. He was so close. You know, and then when they started doing the virtual photon thing, I mean, as soon as a physicist heard the word virtual photon, this a bell should have gone off. Why are we playing this game? This continuing dialogue is great and important, and that's what YouTube does well. Well, frankly, if you think this is, you know, good or great or doing YouTube well, I don't think so. This is just trying to suppress and shut people up with a, you know, just mob rule saying, shut up, shut up, shut up. We don't like you. We don't like what you're saying. We don't want to hear what you're saying. You're you know, offending our sacred cows. You know, it's just an example of people being berated and insulted, you know, out of a right to talk. You know, the nature, the personal nature of their fucking rags. The whole thing is disgusting. So, have you seen this? I love this. Gravitational wave announcement. I don't, for the life of me, understand what it could possibly mean. I mean, I really can't understand why this is a significant thing, this gravitational wave thing. I mean, we've always known that gravity moves. Okay, I mean, it doesn't, you can't undo once you've created some of it. It just keeps going into space, okay, that there's this influence. But the real funny part is gravity, to be felt, is really the absence of the force. So that's what gravity waves are made out of. They're not made out of something being pushed up. They're made out of a deficit being created. There's an absence of gravity, so to speak. So you have two big objects circulating each other. And that's how most galaxies started, for example. And so you have these two big objects, and as they circle each other, they line up here, they don't line up here. They line up here, they don't line up here. Now, by my theory, right, gravity is twice as strong, in the sense that twice as much is blocked when they're in this position than in this position. So there's a peak here of gravity. Alright, and then when they're sideways, they're still the same amount getting blocked, but it's now spread out. So it peaks and it spreads, and it peaks and it spreads with each one of those rotations. So there's a frequency in the field. Okay, the massive field now has a wave moving through it that is made out of this deficit coming at a frequency. You know, this absence of gravity. Now, the fact that you think this detector that has no lens, okay, it has no lens, it's just, there's no lens, can look at all of a big giant wad of space, I mean a huge hunk of space at one time, and it's going to receive gravity waves from what? And resolve them into something real. It's going to be able to identify the thing causing the wave. Now, light and the waves do move at the same speed, so we could actually see something doing something and say, okay, that's what we're seeing. But for you to have the expectation, without a lens on this thing, that you can look at a big giant hunk of the universe at a time and find one gravity wave, I don't even understand how they think they can do that. And again, what the fuck could this possibly mean? How could this mean anything to anybody? This is like finding a photon coming from space. Why would I be impressed if I looked up in the sky and I saw a photon of light from a star, millions of light years away? I mean, okay, and then the other part of it, I guess I would argue, is the existence of these waves validates my theory entirely. So if you can find one, great, because it just proves I'm right. Again, I mean, it's just evidence of exactly what my theory, of course, would predict that those deficits in gravity would travel through space forever, theoretically, until some other force wiped them out. You know, some other perpendicular force, of course. So, yeah, but I don't get it, frankly. This just sounds like they spent a whole bunch of money on this insanely stupid mechanism for detecting these insanely useless things, and so they have to justify it, so now they're going to announce something because they need to say we did something with all that money. But I still can't, if somebody will please explain it to me or post me a link to something where it demonstrates how gravitational waves would be a news story, that somehow we didn't expect them. I don't understand. I don't understand why this means something. And I certainly don't understand how they prove space-time at all. Yeah, no chance of me understanding that at all. This, like I said, my theory perfectly predicts them. Anyway. There's no such thing as empty space if you have to bend space to go faster than light. I don't even know what that means, so, but whatever. Superior mind, that true. I'd analogize to third grid voxels, which the graphics are energy packets must pass through. Why are you doing this stuff? I mean, I don't, I sure thought you're on my side here. It just seems like you're just inventing shit that doesn't have anything to do with anything. Sort of an equilibrium like described in the vid where when a direction is added in, another is added out in the opposite sort of way. Momentum conversion. So basically gravity actually is momentum. So basically gravity actually is momentum? No, but gravity is acceleration. Bypassing directive influence would be an interesting trick indeed. See, I don't know what the fuck that is. The reason I said that is because let's say our universe is just one of countless others, would have to be a ultimate universe, which would be an infinite, and its laws of physics would allow these bubbles of other universe, including, oh fuck that, fuck these idiots. It's just so depressing. You almost went to MIT. What stopped you? Well, fundamentally, what stopped me from going to college was anxiety disorder. That actually I still have, and it's catastrophically destroyed my life. But regardless, so yeah, I just couldn't do the traveling thing. But what happened was, well, MIT wanted me to take some more tests and do this and do this. And then they were twice as expensive, so I got accepted at LSU. So, and it was like dirt cheap, $7 grand a year or something. And I was paying for it, so so I said, "Fuck it, I'll go to LSU." So, yeah, well, might say it gets into all kinds. There's always a little bit of I lived in Louisiana as a kid, so that's I guess why they're going to I got a break on the fee, and because I was a resident when I was a kid, I guess, so they cut you a break. And I just it was sort of the family thing. They kind of they were big fans of the the LSU Tigers or whatever the fuck they were called, the football team or something. I don't know, some kind of. So I just thought this would be just a simpler solution, and I love the idea of the warm weather. I loved going back to the South and all of that shit. So yeah. So anyway, so I never went to either one though. Did have my bags packed, but I just never, just couldn't face the idea of 4 years of prison. Okay, the links he skipped. Not that it matters. So these are these horrible, terrible experimental pages. So okay, we did this fake here. So we'll move on to the other fake page. Where's the other fake page? Yeah, that was this one. Like I'm supposed to believe this is the single slit. I mean, right here, aren't we done? I mean, we're just done, right? I mean, if this is how they have to frame the argument with, distortions and manipulations that are just skewing it. Just skew it to make it look like something. And obviously, we know the double slit goes on. This gets faded, and then it gets brighter again, and then bright. We know this isn't the double slit experiment, right? Just as this is apparently just the central maxima of the single slit. We know that this has other little humps over here. So I'm just saying, you can't honestly recognize that this is I can't say doctored photo, but a totally manipulated presentation. I mean, you won't concede that? Well, yeah, you suck. Alright, so I'm finally done with these pages. So I'm just done with this. You're just not going to be allowed to do this. You just can't keep posting crappy links and forcing me to debunk every one of your crappy links. Now, the other one, he posted a link to Khan Academy. I did a video on it, okay? I played his video. Alright, and you could even hear it when he got to the Huygens thing, that he was almost like laughing. First he's laughing with, how do you say Huygens, Boygens, Moigens, Moikens? You know, but it was like, okay, yeah. I know it sounds ridiculous, but yeah, there's really a bunch of little waves. Now, why don't they, I'll just ask you a simple question, right? Do you have the balls to answer it? Simple question. Why don't they use Huygens for the 2-slit experiment, or the 3-slit, and the 4-slit, and the 5-slit, and the 6-slit? Why isn't Huygens part of every slit experiment? Why, if Huygens is part of all these wave dynamics, if it's a principle, why aren't they using it in all the other experiments? If Huygens happens, if it's a real thing, why aren't they accounting for it in the 2-slit experiment, and in the 3-slit, and the 4-slit, and the 5-slit, and the 6-slit? Why isn't Huygens talked about in any of those experiments? How about an answer? I can answer it for you. Is that they don't need it in the other experiments. They don't need a fix. They don't need a fake piece of crap. And it's just like if they ever found a really good lensing image, all of a sudden they wouldn't be saying, and there's a bunch of dark matter there too. Yeah, they won't be saying that. They won't be finding any dark matter where they don't seem to need it. It's only where they need it that the dark matter exists, right? Isn't that how it works? That's science, right? That's the scientific way. Only cheat when you have to. I mean, people are just, you're just such, you know, you're defenders of the popery. The church you're worshiping, I mean, they are just naked emperors, okay? I mean, rubbing each other's anal tissue. It's all a big pile of crap, and you're fucking dupes to it. Anyway, till next time. I think that's all I need to get to. Oh yeah, I wanted to read some Piro comments, right? Light is a wave. Piro said so. Piro knows. Alright. Anyway. Wave particle duality. Are you discussing wave particle duality with Gary? Yeah, okay, there we go. Let's see, I'll read some of that. Maybe technically, but no. Yeah, well, obviously I'm not going to worry about any kind of duality. And obviously Piro doesn't see any duality. He's all full of the wave. It's a wave, it's a wave. I really don't see any point in talking about duality. Once you're saying that it does this, it has a magnetic component and it has an electrical component, then why don't you just say there's no duality? Because how the fuck do you tie that to the ton part? You might as well just throw the ton in the toilet, because the ton isn't going to have anything to do with all that mush. And I'm lost to what's being discussed here. Sorry, I'm late to the party. You're just so full of yourself. I'm important, and you really need to explain everything to me. So what is it you're talking about now? I just love when people show up in rooms and do that. What are you talking about? I'm too busy and important a person to pay attention for a while and figure out what you're talking about, so I want you to fill me in. Because I'm important. Is it some kind of philosophical debate on the nature of physics, then? Well, why don't you watch a few videos and see how it turns out, fuckhead? Instead of asking people to explain it to you. Why don't I explain the 14 hours of videos? Yeah, I'll just summarize. You suck. Yeah, that's what the video's about. It's how you fucking suck, cue ball B. God. Obviously a retard fucking raped your cue ball A mother. He doesn't think light has a wave-like properties. He doesn't think water waves diffract. Well, I know they don't diffract. Whether they interfere in a single slit is, I'm sure they don't do that. We are a long way from discussing wave-particle duality because he doesn't recognize the issue. And the issue is as says it, and it's proven. The single-slit experiment clearly demonstrates that light exhibits wave-like properties. So again, he's saying the single-slit experiment clearly demonstrates that light exhibits wave-like properties. Even though the single slit in a wave tank doesn't display interference pattern. So, I mean, you see the irony in that? I mean, I see the irony in that. Well, one, he was arguing as if he thought the point of a two-slit experiment was what establishes that light is wave-like. What? I suggest that diffraction itself shows that, and also prism. Again, so prisms somehow show that photons have to be a wave, because it can't be possible that photons interact with electrons in the fucking glass. That's not possible. You know, the self-interference in diffraction, so there's self-interference, so diffraction is now called self-interference, is a better demonstration, but there are many. Well, you keep saying there are, but you don't show any, you don't provide any evidence of that many. Yeah, the very fact that people once thought light was a wave is enough to demonstrate that light has wave-like properties. Again, where is that? I don't see it. If something doesn't look like a wave, they wouldn't have called it a wave. And who does that make sense to? You know, I'm not even sure why they even started wave things. I mean, it's partly the shadow thing, I think, threw people off. But I'm not sure. Anyway, might as well read the last one. It's incredible, isn't it? It's great to see someone react on the outside who hasn't been slowly sucked into this madness. It's because it doesn't fit with his bullshit theory. Yeah, so cue ball is evidence of how none of the real people will ever accept this awful, horrible theory. I might as well call it a religion. I'm sure as hell. It sure as hell isn't science. So again, but bent space-time, that's real hard science. Yeah, that's really getting to it, boy. When you create those fake dimensions and hide energy, enough energy to move galaxies. Well, we need enough energy to move a galaxy. Where do we get it from? Well, let's just create a fake dimension and we can just do whatever the fuck we want there. We can make singularities, we can make all kinds of things. That's literally the only reason. Yeah, well, exactly. You're a religious nut, no doubt about it. He also doesn't acknowledge gravitational lensing. I don't acknowledge you have evidence of it. Time dilation. He puts time dilation in here. Can you believe this lying piece of fucking cunt? Yes, don't bother, alright? Look, there's a point where I'm just going to say, okay, I will have to block you, because this is just lying now. Alright? I mean, you're just lying. I mean, fuck. I provide an explanation for time dilation. A rational one, fuckhead. And that's right in my document, so fuck you, you liar. Space-time. Yes, of course, space-time is rubbish. Basically, the entirety of quantum mechanics and general relativity. Well, when quantum mechanics was called quantum electrodynamics, then it was a real science. But yes, quantum mechanics, as you poofters have turned it into fairy dust and unicorns, yes, is crap. And right, Einstein was just fucking wrong, okay? You want to think Einstein was right, you want to go to your grave thinking there's some sort of place called space-time, go the fuck ahead. But I'm saying it's a crock of shit. It's a made-up dark matter contrivance, and that's all it is. He refuses to acknowledge 100 plus years of physical observations. Like what? Where are they again? Show me these observations. I have never seen bent space. He also believes he will win the Nobel Prize. Well, if I'm right, it's the only logical consequence that could possibly happen. For 100 years, you've had the wrong answer. I provide the correct answer and unify everything. I think that's going to get me a Nobel Prize, asshole. Basically, after all these years, he's become a true nut, a crank in the purest sense. And again, what's going to be your penance when you're proven wrong? Again, how are you going to be able to make it up to me? You're raping my character, okay, based on no evidence that you've provided. You have nothing to defend your authoritarian certainty with, your dogma. You provide no evidence. Where's your proof of gravitational lensing? Where is it? Where's your proof that time dilation is being created by a bent, warped dimension in space? Where's your evidence of that? That time is a dimension. Where do you have evidence that time is a dimension? You haven't even done that much. You haven't even proved it's a dimension let alone that you can bend it. Okay, maybe he'll get bored of this insanity after a while. I certainly hope so. Maybe you'll get cancer and die, because that's certainly what you deserve. I really think the appropriate response to amendment at this point should be silence. So again, this is the game they're playing. Yeah, I'm for open-minded scientific investigation, and yet you're such a fucking coward. As hard as it may be, let's just lie some more. He has made it absolutely clear he won't be swayed. Well, what's swayed by what? Again, the images of gravitational lensing are shit. The two-slit experiment is hardly explained by this bogus Huygens thing. Again, why aren't you using Huygens in the two-slit experiment math or in the three-slit experiment math? Why, if Huygens is a principle, why aren't you using it every time there's a wave? Oh, that's right, because it would fuck up the math entirely. Yeah, so fuck you. And you either agree with his anti-relativistic crank theory or you're an idiot, cunt, etc. Again, that's not the argument. I'm saying you're perfectly entitled to believe your nonsense, but don't tell me I'm wrong or an idiot or a cunt or a retard or a crank because I claim to say you people you don't even know what evidence is if you think this is evidence. He specifically said that he has no burden of proof. Well, again, what I've said is I have no extraordinary burden of proof. So I'm just saying, what was Einstein's proof? Where has Einstein proved the existence of space-time? He hasn't. I'm stating the same claims. I mean, I'm saying gravity exists, and I'm giving you an explanation for it that's totally consistent with the math. I've given you an explanation for time dilation that's totally consistent with the math. Now, you want to argue it, you can argue it, but I'm just saying that's the fact. And I'm the only one giving you an explanation of magnetism, fucker, that's completely consistent with the math. And we are talking about fucking science here. Well, no, you're not. You're talking about your religion. He has used gravity itself as evidence for the never-before-detected magic particles in his theory. Well, again, that's not what I did. What I did was give you an example that it's just saying, where is it? I can say you can detect it, okay? It's not an undetectable mechanism, gravity. It's quite detectable, the mechanism, just like photons are quite detectable as photons. But I can't give you a picture of a photon. Oh, he determined whether evidence is valid or not, depending on whether it agrees with his theory. Well, again, that's just a lie. Where? Show me the example of that. You don't have any. You're just saying. You just make this shit up. Okay? I say I'm not. You're the one saying it's a wave. It's proven. I'm the one saying you obviously don't have proof. I'm certainly not saying I can prove it's not a wave. I can't prove it's not a wave. All I can say is I believe it's not a wave because if it's not a wave, then it's able to unify everything. And that's probably a more significant thing than needing it to be a wave. He has shown that he is willing to shove reality away if it doesn't agree with his beliefs. Well, again, you're saying it's reality. So again, you're making these assertions. You know it. It's a fact. It's proven. That's your claim. All right? And I don't think you've dealt with the fact that you're not even close to enough evidence to make that statement. So you're the religious kook, just as any religious person would. No, you sound just like the religious person. You're saying God is God, and until I produce the missing link, you'll never accept evolution. I don't know why he's gone so far off the deep end with this shit. Maybe it's just his incredible stubborn nature. Maybe either way, he has become an argument with a religious zealot. Well, again, okay, you can keep saying that, but I'm just saying who's the one? You're the one claiming you're infallible gods. You're the one claiming you have an infallible truth. Jesus Christ. Ugh, Connor Ward. Play me on CS 1.6. What the fuck? So many people need to fall into some fucking dense space. I continue to watch occasionally out of morbid curiosity. No one expects him to change his mind, but there is also no particular need to ignore him either due to the lack of social impact. Like that's what that has anything to do with this conversation. All I'm doing this for is to say, okay, look, here's the theory, test it, challenge it. And you're not challenging a single fucking thing I'm talking about. You're just claiming you can't in any way bend or twist any one of my fundamental beliefs at all because they're all rock solid proof. You may have developed a dislike for relativity in part because of moral relatives. Well, no, so more speculation. You may get, erect penises looking at naked 4-year-olds, but that's just because, yeah, you suck. And most people who suck have all kinds of bad habits. Many individuals also use quantum mechanics to justify their pet ideology or promote mysticism. Well, yeah, that's exactly what you're doing, I think. You pussy. In popular culture, quantum mechanics is very woo-woo, far removed, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, who cares? It's tedious. So these are all heavily mathed links. But anyway, so Huygens comes up here. So Mr. Roboto. I'll ask you, so why then don't they use Huygens for 2-slit diffraction? And 3-slit diffraction, and 4-slit diffraction. If Huygens is a real thing, why aren't you using it in all diffraction mathematics? Answer, please. Epistemology, what we have known is that what is really going on acts exactly like waves. Exactly. So he's saying exactly again. It obviously doesn't exactly act like waves in a single slit unless you create turbulence, so you have more than one wave going through the slit. Yeah, till then it doesn't act anything like a photon. And at the moment it's sensible to say they appear to be waves. Well, again, it's sensible to be draconian about it, and if anybody else suggests it's anything else, shoot them. So don't pretend you have any kind of humility in your pronunciations here, your pronouncing of what the truth is. You will not allow anybody to say, no, they don't appear as waves. You won't even allow that. Any other theory still has to explain why they behave exactly as waves. So again, it keeps saying it's exactly like waves. There's no argument. It's an on-off pattern. Wow, why do they have this complex on-off pattern that can only be created by waves? Gary starts off saying they don't behave that way. Well, that's the truth. In the single-slit wave experiment, they don't. That's just telling us not to believe our stinking eyes and instead believe Gary. So that's what Piro says it is. So Piro says that a wave tank, without creating noise, without forcing more than one wave through the opening, he can create a diffraction pattern with a single slit in a wave tank. Good luck, fucker. I don't think he can. Alright, here's a response to your prism remarks. Oh, good, let's do this. That it has a frequency is a wave property. So again, he just won't even pay any attention, right? So there's just no point. You can't make any counter argument to the idea that frequency can have other effects, as if me throwing baseballs at my computer screen. And if I throw one every 60 seconds, nothing happens to my computer screen. It wobbles and it stops, and then it wobbles and it stops. But if I throw the baseballs every second, then it wobbles and falls over. You can't understand that. That's not possible. That can't possibly happen in reality, says Piro, because that frequency is a wave property. And I obviously, when I throw baseballs, hard objects at something, they're waves now. They're not hard objects at a frequency. Machine guns shoot waves at people. They don't shoot bullets. Sure they don't. My comment was carefully transcribed from Gary's video. I was hoping for more than one sentence reply, but you've keyed on the word frequency from an angle I hadn't considered. I wonder if this is the cause of the disconnect. Yeah, well, I frankly, I don't know. What's the disconnect? He's just basically claiming that there's no other way to cause a pattern without a wave doing it. Thanks for continuing dialogue. You speak of photons interfering with each other, but Gary brings up the point that in some cases a single photon is being fired. How can a single photon interfere with itself? Oh, we gotta get some silly answers. That's the whole fucking point. It can do that only if it's really a wave. A really wave can interfere with itself. And the particle is an effect we see from one part of the wave. And the particle is an effect we see from one part of the wave. So again, he really does believe that if you do a legitimate, you poke a puddle of water, the wave will interfere with itself. Yeah. Yeah, no. It can only do the, okay. Why we see that one part and only the effect of the rest. Why we see that one part and only the effects of the rest is the odd thing. Sorry, no way. We are investing this. You're investing it. Okay. Good luck with that. I don't know if you're going to get too much gold for that shit. There is no point in denying it. There we go. It's a fact. You just can't tell me that if I poke a puddle, that wave interferes with itself all over the fucking place. You can just see the jizz all over it. It's been rubbing its own. Yeah, it's really getting into it. All that is needed is explanations for what we see so far. Well, whatever. I mean, there are explanations. You just don't want to hear them. I mean, you can bring them up in so many other contexts, like I said. I mean, electricity, you know, there's you do this whole field equations for magnetism and electricity, and it goes across whole open surfaces. And you know, there's clearly a field created between things, and obviously that would be my, you know, by my theory, the gravity's going through them, and that's creating the field. And clearly, electrons could be oriented by that dynamic, arranged, and yeah, there's your explanation. Well, the point of Gary's theory is to provide a plausible explanation for the mystery. Well, we don't want to do that part. Gary's theory starts off with false statements, so it's wrong. There we go. So again, I'm not allowed to say photons aren't a wave. So if I dare to speculate that they may be something else and explain how they can work as something else in all of these ways, that's not good enough. He does not explain. Yes, he does. He says, there's what happens. The math will work out. No, it won't. Yes, it does. And I'll quote Feynman saying that. And maybe I'll just play the Feynman clip over and over and over again, so you'll get the understanding that Feynman says it does work out. It's not like that has not been explored. Again, he says he knows what my theory is. He says it's already existed, and that somehow it's already been thoroughly debunked, and there's no way I could ever say anything about it. I've said nothing new. Everybody's always talking about how magnetism is polarization, and it's polarizing gravity, and that theory's already been debunked. I mean, you can't argue with this shit. Of course, if it's not in a video on YouTube, then it doesn't count to Gary. Well, I'm not asking for the video to be on YouTube. I'm saying link me to the PDF file. Link me to some kind of legitimate evidence demonstrating your absolute proof that photons are waves. Fuck. The wave function of a photon only interfere with itself. So yeah, he totally ignored the itself part. To say that the light is a wave and dismiss that photons only interfere with themselves, then you're dismissing photons. Are you saying photonic model of light is incorrect? I don't know what the photonic model of light is. If so, the burden of proof to disprove established particle physics is on you. Again, this whole obligation that somebody has to disprove the existence of space-time is ridiculous, because you've never proven its existence in the first place. I don't have to disprove wave theory. You haven't proven it. How can I disprove something that doesn't have any evidence? I mean, all I can say is your evidence sucks. And I've said that pretty clearly. Your evidence sucks. I do not believe that is correct. Photons can also interfere with each other. Well, that's obviously not the point, though. Obviously, the particle and wave characteristic of light have not been fully unified. I mean, I don't even know. How are you going to unify a particle and a wave? However, it looks to me like the big picture is waves. It looks like. And at the same time, he says it's proven. And the secondary thing is why we perceive the effects primarily of the photon and only can infer the wave. So you're inferring something, but you're saying it's an absolute fact. And if anyone says anything otherwise, they're wrong. Okay. As bosons, theoretically, they wouldn't. In a sense that if they would interfere with each other, they would pass through each other and not collide. Well, we clearly know that photons don't interfere with each other, so this isn't even an argument that can be rationally held up. Alright, let's see this guy. Photon, Shapiro. The hilarious thing is that I pointed out to him that it was a single photon to show him that it was a wave. Again, you showed nothing. You showed crap. Again, not hard evidence. A mushy experiment performed poorly. I'll turn it by hand. That is a whole point. In fact, I should have said single electron because that was the specific experiment. Oh, so now we're doing electrons. Well, again, I'm talking about photons, okay? What electrons are, I don't give a fuck what you turn those things into because I don't need them for my theory at all. So you can play whatever unicorn games you want to. You want to make them into marshmallow clouds or, strawberry stars. Go right the fuck ahead, you silly cunt. He continually refuses to acknowledge reality, and reality is what we say it is. And the more you try to point him in the right direction, I mean, this is just so obnoxious. Like, oh, like some fucking, fucking pervert of the Inquisition, telling people they're doing it for the good, for your own good. The more defensive and nonsensical he gets. No, the more you look like little putrid pussies. I mean, I ask you direct questions. Why don't you answer the direct questions? Why don't they use the Huygens principle when doing the math for the double slit experiment? You really have to start questioning the level of sanity here. No, you really have to start questioning the level of honesty by you weasels for keep posting links to the same bad fucking experiments done over and over again. Poorly. It's getting exhausting. So here we go. I think we already did these. I offered many visual representations, metaphors, etc., etc. I didn't discount videos. I'm saying not everything is in a video. Well, you haven't provided anything, so again, this is just idiotic. Visual representations? That shitty drawing you did on your computer? Fuck you. I'm responding to, let's see, I am responding to these relayed points. The question to a referral to listen to the answers he's been getting on these things for approaching 10 years from me. I don't even know what that means. I don't think you realize I must be using direct quotes. I don't think you realize I'm using direct quotes. Direct, not paraphrases, from Gary's video response to you. These are not my words. Also, I'm trying to narrow down and isolate the cause of the disconnect between your understanding of light and Gary's understanding. Well, you weren't using direct quotes when you were talking about ignore the math and do this and do that. Those weren't direct quotes. There is a mathematically infinite bars. Okay, this is pyro. Technically, there are mathematically infinite bars. So that's a Pyrrho telling us now that the diffraction is infinite. Does it have evidence of an infinite angle of diffraction? I don't think so. But they get too faint to see. So he's saying there's actually diffraction at, say, 179 degrees to the surface. I don't think there's any evidence of that. The number and location. So I think that's wrong. Okay, can we put in capital letters? I think that's wrong. I don't think any physics professors would agree with that statement. that there's infinite bars. The number and location of bars, well, it couldn't be infinite anyway. Even if it was 179.9 degrees, you still couldn't make infinite. The number and location of bars you can detect depends on the strength of the signal, the wavelength of the light, and the width of the slit. Well, the wavelength of the light has very little to do with it. That just has to do with the phase. So the only reason why they use monochromatic light is because if you use full spectrum light, they'll bleed into each other and you won't get a clear pattern. But the wavelength of the light has very little to do with how intense the pattern will be. And the width of the slit. Counting bars is idiotic. I mean, fuck. Yeah, no, it's only the most fundamental part of the pattern, and we as scientists, no, scientists shouldn't count the bars, because that's not all important, how they're manufactured and what angles they come at. Oh no. Has nothing to do with anything. Amazing. Asking for videos and the like is also ridiculous. Okay, so asking for some explanation for a single slit diffraction besides an artificial mathematical mechanism to cut the single slit in half, oh yeah, that's just expecting way too much. Buy a textbook. Yeah, go buy some propaganda, right, on wave mechanics and educate yourself. There, that's just so obnoxious. But don't dare test us. Don't force us to prove what we say. Don't do that, because we can't, and that's his simple answer. He can't prove it. He can just emphatically declare it to be true, like all the other religious cunts. And that's all this whole physics thing is turned into, is a religion. They want it to be special, they want it to be magical, they don't want to live in a dead, cold, harsh, brutal, checkerboard reality. Bastards. Anyway. So they will crucify the honest. Yes. Metaphorically. That's enough now. God, sorry, I'm not a great reader of comments. Not terribly interested. Anyway, why do you provide these links? Especially since I've already made a video responding to Khan Academy. I mean, really, it's the same video I responded to. You know, I could show you, it'll have little Huygenses in it. Watch this. It's on a different web. Oh, there they are. Little Huygensie, little Huygensie, little Huygensie, little Huygensie, little Huygensie, little Huygensie. Yeah. Why do they do that? Yeah, why do they do that? Yeah, well, why am I asking why? That's pretty stupid of you, Gary. Why are you asking why? That's a silly thing to do. See, these aren't really, these aren't slits. This is where he's just doing the Huygensie thing. See, the Huygensies will pop in at just the right place. See? Right there and right there is where a Huygensie will matter. So I can turn the single slit into the double slit. Yeah. It's just a complete fraud of the math. Alright. So anyway, like I said, I already did this. So I won't do it twice. So until next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. Yeah, I really have to finish writing now. I mean, I did think there would be something that would, stimulate some sort of, I need to do this or I need to do that and I can make this better. But these people aren't even arguing anything now, right? It's just their obsession with this wave thing. The wave thing is, the whole thing teeters on this wave theory now. And they're just going to ignore everything else in the document. So there's just no point. Yeah. So anyway. Till next time and such.